Welcome to Everyday Buddhism, making every day better by applying the proven tools found in Buddhist concepts. Welcome to episode 43 of Everyday Buddhism, making every day better. Today, I'm happy to introduce a special guest episode with Dr. Christiane Michelberger, a retired physician, psychoanalyst, and past spiritual speaker who currently mentors seekers in their quest to awaken. I say past spiritual speaker because, as you will hear more in the episode, she does not consider herself a spiritual seeker anymore. She considers herself someone who, as she says, did the work. So Christiane guides people using a direct pointing process developed by Satchidananda Kevin Shanelik. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. Where you apply that direct pointing or inquisition through dialogue process applied to the 10 fetters as taught by the Buddha. Christiane talks about how more than 10,000 hours of meditation and 40 years of studying Buddhist scriptures didn't help her deal with debilitating fear when she was faced with the reality of breast cancer. She goes on to say that she actually later faced uterine cancer and did not have that debilitating fear response because it was after her coming to this method. She discovered the website Liberation Unleashed and the book The Gateless Gatecrashers about the time she was beginning treatment for her breast cancer. And that was her personal first step in facing that all her previous seeking was a form of spiritual sleepwalking, where you replace one illusion of the world or one illusion of your own awakening for another. Christiane is currently working on a book called Finding Awakening to share what she says is her, quote, no-nonsense journey beyond the self to peace and freedom, end quote. And her, quote, mission is to put an end to all suffering, unquote. I really enjoyed our conversation, as you will notice with our persistent giggles and the longer length of the episode. Christiane is a delightful conversation partner who shares important concepts for your own self-reflection that can be taken up by an everyday practitioner. Concepts like the importance of seeing through the me, or anatta, no self, embracing the ordinary, why meditation alone may not be enough, and shifting from spiritual illusions to simple reality. Before we jump right in, I have a couple of caveats to share, however. Usually when I have guests on the podcast, I have direct experience with either their teaching or their books or both. So when I have them on as guests, it is a subtle or not so subtle endorsement of who they are as teachers, people, and authors. With Dr. Christiane Michelberger, her appearance on the show is not a form of endorsement for the method she uses in mentoring because I have no direct experience with it. I offer the conversation, though, because her story has value due to the examination of anatta, or no self, and shunyata, emptiness. We engage with those with those concepts quite a bit in the conversation. And if in the conversation it sounds as if Christiane suggests that in working through the 10 fetters has an end result or promise of no pain, no anxiety, etc., let me remind you that this is a report of Christiane's personal experience with her own spiritual practice and her experience with those of the people she guides. And it has nothing I have direct knowledge of, so I cannot endorse it. On another note, it's lawn mowing season, so you may enjoy a bit of background lawn mowing sound. But enough of the intro. On with our wide ranging conversation that touches on so many important topics in the application of Buddhist teachings to your life: spiritual bypassing, brainwashing and guru worship, and dealing with the stages of grief we might be going through during the new pandemic world we find ourselves in. On with the episode. So, welcome, Christiane. I've been looking forward to this podcast for quite a while. I feel actually it's kind of exciting that it's in during the pandemic. I think we have, I would like to talk to you about that a little bit today, because I think it can be really helpful, offering different approaches on how to maneuver that in not just in your day-to-day activities, but how to handle the stuff that comes up in your mind. And I think you can speak to that. The other thing I'd like to talk to you about is all your approaches of teaching, or I think you call it guiding instead of teaching, right? Is that true?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. All the approaches of guiding people down your particular path, which happens to be unlatching, unleashing, disconnecting from the 10 fetters, which for my audience, this is a much more of a Theravedic approach than what you're used to on my podcast. I take a more Mahayana approach. So where I would be talking about the prajna paramita and the transcendent perfection, Christiane's going to talk in a different way, but we're all, I think, getting at the same point of view from the Buddhist teachings. So Christiane, again, welcome. I'm so glad you could make it, I guess, but making it is kind of an interesting term since we're all still stuck in our home and it's not like we have to go anywhere to make it. but so without any further yapping on my part, let's start by you telling us a little bit about your relationship with Buddhism and how you went from being a physician and a psychotherapist to a seeker to a guide.
Mm-hmm. First of all, thank you so much for having me, Wendy. It's delightful to talk with you. I really love it. So, how did it all start? It started on a night shift as an intern when I had just finished my medical studies. I was in the surgery department at that time. And so at like 8 p.m., the phone rang and the receptionist announced that the ambulance would bring a severely injured motorbiker. Mm-hmm. And since that was far beyond my scope of dealing with patients, I called everybody together in the emergency room. And so we were standing there waiting for this motorbiker to come. And when he came, he was already dead. We couldn't do anything for him. So the next thing you have to do as a doctor, you have to find out who this is. And so we searched all his motor jacket pockets and I found the ID and I looked at it, and he was born exactly in the year I was born. I was 26 at that point. And I thought, gosh, I drive that road every day. I could have been dead too. And then was kind of like, I was realizing for the first time in my life that death is not actually an always existing probability, but an upcoming reality.
Yeah.
And the thought just came up, gosh, and I don't really even know who I am. And that thought set me on a tangent. I didn't know what to do with it, but it was like, I don't know who I am. And that's the most important thing to find out. All right. I had heard a bit about Buddhism in school. Actually, I even wrote a paper about it because I found it interesting, but I hadn't engaged with that at all afterwards. And so I didn't know what to do. I told my husband at home. And the next week, when I was on another weekend again, when I came home afterwards, he said, hey, there is an announcement in the newspaper. There is an introduction into meditation. Maybe you want to do that. And I thought, Zen, introduction into Zen. I had no idea what Zen was, but it was something Buddhist. And I thought, well, maybe that is probably the most well-known figure who was enlightened. And so I thought, yeah, I'll go there. And so I went for this weekend. And since then, for decades, I didn't stop meditating every day. And I went on retreats, and I worked with Professor Nagaya Roshi. Maybe you know him still.
No, of him, yes. I haven't met him.
Yes, he was then already like 84, well, in his 80s anyway. But he was very agile and very bright, and he spoke a bit of German because he had studied philosophy in Germany at the beginning of the 20th century. And so I worked with him and was a German disciple of him. And I really badly wanted to get enlightened. And in the meantime, like when you meditate so strongly and so dedicated, something is bound to happen, I think. Anyway, I had some beautiful insights, and I thought, great, I'm on the right track. I just have to intensify that. And so I wanted to go in a Japanese monastery. And there was only one at that point. I don't remember the name right now, but I wrote there and said, I would like to come to you and study. And I got a German reply because a Benedictine monk was in the monastery at that point of time. And he replied to me, telling me all about what this was and how difficult it would be to get a visa for staying longer. And basically saying, don't do it. Just go to at least 12 sessions in a year in Germany first. So you kind of get what you're getting yourself into here.
Well, that was pretty good advice, right?
Yeah, actually, he later became a Zen master.
Yeah.
And so that was the start of it all.
Interesting. The Zen part of it, and I'll share that I've done research on you because you gave me, and your publicity person gave me the links to everywhere, and I like to get to know my guests a little bit. So I heard a bit of your interview from a couple years ago. With the Irish host, I forget his name now. Yeah. It was interesting. Number one, it was just a little aside. It was fun to hear the two accents. For me, I like accents. I like accents. I like to listen to them, and his Irish accent is a little different, and so it was nice to hear that. It was musical for me to listen to that interview. So thank you for that. But then the other thing that I picked up on was that. And there's a couple things, and I'm trying to decide where to start, but I think I'll start at this and then we'll go to the other thing. The other thing is about death, because you talked about that, and you talked about that today, and I think that will lead into our pandemic discussion. But one of the things you said in that interview was that is that when you at that point, at the time of that motorcycle accident, you became a seeker, and seeking was essentially your driver, your goal, right? And you, like you just said, now you so wanted to get enlightened. I think that's a particularly that's something I think many people can relate to more today, even than like 10 years ago, with all these self-proclaimed gurus. And I'm not saying that in a negative way, but, like Eckhart Tolle and Adyashanti and so many people talk about being awake, being enlightened. And I think I have mixed feelings about all that, to tell you the truth. I feel that it creates a goal driven expectation of what the spiritual path is all about, when essentially it's not. The goal is not. The goal is the path, as they say. So this goal of being enlightened, whatever that is, and that's another thing I would like to talk about, is I think it disturbs me, because I think it sets beginning Buddhists or beginning spiritual practitioners up going down the wrong path. And you freely admitted on this show that I listened to that that's exactly what happened to you.
Yeah, right.
You went.
Stay a seeker.
You identify, you put that, like I talk about in my book, Everyday Buddhism, you put that label on your chest and you wore it proudly, right? I am a seeker. And because I am a seeker, I will seek everything, whatever. And I hope this doesn't bother you, but you shared with him that you actually hung out with Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. And if anybody's been around, many of my podcast listeners are much younger than me, so I like you. I've studied Buddhism for 40 years, so I'm no baby, and I know Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, and I remember the sort of hold he had on the Western media. It was amazing to me, and his big car and his all that stuff, and clearly he was I won't say fraud, but maybe I don't know how to say that. It might not be a fraud. I don't have any idea where his mind was, but I know he led a lot of people down the wrong path, as many gurus and teachers do sometimes.
Yes.
So you got yourself interested in that, and but then you unleashed yourself, and then that took you back to maybe I should meditate again. I don't know whether I'm going to meditate. So what was the thing that, I know it was the seeking that made you start again, but what was your goal? Where did you think you were going to go after Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh? Was it going to be, I give up on the whole thing, or was it still the goal of enlightenment?
Well, the goal of awakening never changed. But at that point, I mean, what I watched was the turning of a new religious movement into a cult. It was a cult. I can't judge
Exactly.
Bhagwan's mind where he was at. That's not I can't do that. But
me too.
Whatever happened within this organization, it turned into a cult. And when I went away, I had this particular situation that, it happened to many people, and I think many people who meditate will know this, that whenever we had a huge meditation hall, I would think it fit 10,000 people.
Wow.
And just sitting there with Bhagwan, not saying anything, I like that best, led me just into, I was just, as usual, watching my breath, and led me into really beautiful spaces, even into unlimited consciousness, unlimited space. And it was sold as being in one space with Bhagwan. And when I found out all the stuff that had happened there, even before I had the time to leave, I decided that I didn't want to be in the same space with this guy any longer. But anytime I would just sit down, these feelings would start up again. Just focusing on my breath for like 5 seconds, and I hated it. I didn't want it any longer, and so I just got up.
What are you referring to, like The jhanas,
Yes,
meditative states. Yeah.
exactly. But I
Okay.
didn't know that word. I didn't know that such
Okay.
a thing exists at all. I hadn't studied anything. I had done Zen, and as you know, they don't speak much. So,
No, no, they don't speak much.
and, so
Sit down.
right, still.
Yeah.
And in the end, I stopped meditating altogether because I this space just started opening again and again, and I still thought it's a link to Bhagwan, and I didn't want that.
So it was a distinct connection in your mind to him rather
Right,
than just to the states
right,
of meditation.
right. And so I stopped meditating, and that led me into a really dark night of the soul.
Mm-hmm.
I was so depressed and suicidal. I always thought not killing myself is the most somebody can ask from me in this lifetime.
Mm.
It was like even breathing was hard. It was as if I was breathing some liquid,
Hmm.
like a gel, and it was so much work to breathe. It was horrible.
Hmm.
And it lasted for like 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I went into psychotherapy, which really helped. And I can only
Was this before you became a
yes,
psychotherapist yourself?
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Mhm. And I can only recommend it. If anybody ends up in a dark night of the soul, do something about it. Every psychotherapist can help with this, even if they don't get what spirituality is.
Mm.
And and then I started to a training to become a psychotherapist myself. As a physician, I had been an anesthesiologist up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to a conference that was a yearly conference, and they always had this kind of eclectic people joining. And there was this Buddhist Theravada nun, Venerable Ayakema, maybe you heard of her.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes.
And she talked in the opera house about the jhanas. And I thought, let's just listen to it. I had no idea what that meant. And then she explained all that. And I thought, I know that. And
I've
then
been there.
and then I was really angry because I felt spiritually abused, made dependent on a person when it had nothing to do with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like Bhagwan was very, very literate. He had read so much. I'm pretty sure he read about that as well. And I mean, he has come across this somehow. And using it for creating this dependence on a person is abuse in my view.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely, and in so many ways. I mean, not to go down too far, another rabbit hole is the this happens a lot in spiritual communities. The problem is if there is a situation of hierarchy or power, which tends to be when it's inherited from cultures and traditions like
Mhm.
Zen Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, so forth. I studied Tibetan Buddhism. That was where I was
Mhm.
had my first had my groundings. I read a lot of Zen, but Tibetan Buddhism was where I did my main teaching and practice. But there's so much, and it's natural. It's a natural outpouring or a natural aspect of that sort of hierarchical system,
Mhm.
right? I'm pleased to see though that Buddhism has a new life
Mhm.
in the West, a new life, and people are exploring it on their own. It can lead to supermarket syndrome, where we have a little of this and a little of that and a little of this, and then nobody goes anywhere and nobody stays on
Right.
any path, and they get nowhere, and it can lead to that. But at the same time, I think there's so much potential
Mhm.
in that, as evidenced by just you and me talking
Mm-hmm.
here,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes. Now,
Don't you
of
think?
course, I'm a totally opponent of this personal cult thing.
Yeah.
And yesterday I opened a discussion on my profile, on my personal profile about it, because there was a very, very funny video by Dan McHugh, one of the people who makes really good non-dual jokes. And like, I need a spiritual fix. Kangachi, new video. No. Adyashanti, no new video. Oh, I call the airline. I need a flight to this place where Ramana lived. And I said, no, we don't know. You don't know. Oh, well, anyway, book me a flight.
Yeah, exactly. It's it's and I think that's natural human behavior too. It's that it's that it's that connection to the person rather than the teachings. The
Right.
Buddha said it's the teachings, not the teacher.
Right.
You know, I mean, his last sermon, his death sermon was,
Mm-hmm.
go be a lamp unto yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I gave you everything I need. I'm out of here, right?
Right.
You don't need any more. I gave it all to you.
Yeah.
And I don't. I think people do naturally cling to people as teachers, and I think they see them as something like non-human, like
Yeah,
superhuman, like
absolutely.
yeah, right, yeah. I mean, it's like I think. That's what I love to share when I do my podcast or I do my sanghas in my groups. I always love to share all the stupid things I did that day or
Mm-hmm.
this week because I want them to know just because I'm teaching Buddhism doesn't mean I'm anywhere near any kind of perfect state, right?
No, not that. What does perfection mean? I mean, it doesn't have a place in that.
Right.
Um,
So I interrupted your story and I'm
yeah,
sorry, and I
well,
don't
I
even
made
really
a
know where
point in
we
that
were.
post that if they want to gas up, fill up their tank with
Yeah.
some positive energy, please don't come to me because I'm going to empty you.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah,
That's very good.
yeah.
Now, I'm going to try to finish up your sort of history and how you
Mm-hmm.
got to what you're teaching now, and then we'll branch off on a few topics. So you hit the dark night of the soul, and then how the heck did you get out of that, other than psychotherapy? I mean, how did you get back on a spiritual path?
Well, I connected to the man who had written me to me from the Japanese Zen monastery. He
Theory,
was
uh-huh.
now an accredited teacher and master, and so I just went with him. And since he was a Benedictine monk, he also had a Christian mystic school, and I
Mhm.
really liked the combination.
Yeah.
So I went to both classes, and they were basically the same, but I studied the organ and I always had a job, a side job in the church. In Germany, you
Oh,
study it and you really get a job there. You get hired by the church.
that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I love church organ music.
yeah,
I personally, it's a very moving
it
experience.
is. And I would sometimes sit up there on my bench and think, when the readings came, wow, this is pure Zen.
Exactly. Exactly. I study the contemplatives, the Christian mystics,
Right.
just as much as I study any Buddhist philosophy.
Hmm.
I mean, it's just beautiful stuff. And I still listen to Christian mystical podcasts and
Yes.
like Richard Rohr and there's another one that I love too. So yeah, exactly. There's not much difference. I think whenever they get out of the not whatever they get out into the non-dual space, you can't recognize which is which, right?
Right, right, exactly. So this is what I did. And it was all right. And yes, I had deep insights again. And that led me to becoming a teacher. But somehow I just didn't feel right to use it. And so fast forward um, to 40 years since the beginning.
Okay.
And I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Death has been my friend, my beloved friend.
Yes.
And I freaked out big time. I freaked out so much. I couldn't believe it. By that time, I was a psychoanalyst, and I knew all the tools you could use to get out of the freak out. Nothing worked. And telling myself that it's not me, not mine, and not myself, this body wouldn't really cut it either.
No, there, yeah. When you're looking, it's sort of like a Buddhist take on there are no atheists in foxholes, right? You know that one? Yeah.
No, I didn't.
Yeah. No, yeah, that was a comment I've heard even since childhood. And I get that. I mean, when you're facing death, your own death, which is wholly different than facing everyone else's,
Oh, yes.
which is what the Buddha taught too, that we should contemplate this every single day. When we're facing your own death, I mean, that fear, that no escape, that sense of running but nowhere to run is it's tough, and that's why there are no atheists in foxholes.
I like that one. May I steal it?
Yeah, it's not mine. I mean, I've heard it since I was a kid. I don't know where it came from, but I think the army probably.
Right. So, and I didn't know what to do. I thought, okay, I really felt like I was spiritual sleepwalking. And all this exotic seeker identity of meditating to the sounds of monkeys screaming in the trees and I don't know what, everything was just, where did it lead me? Nowhere. And I thought, okay, this has to end. And I was still in the hospital at that point. It was as if I turned my back on this identity. It was a nearly physical feeling. And it was clear, and now I had to find. I didn't know how much time I had. Like the stage wasn't clear yet, the histology hadn't come back. And so, and I didn't know what to do. I had exhausted all the means known to me. And so, well, I didn't do anything first. And then, because I already had a website about Buddhism, I also had a Facebook page, and a friend of mine had liked a blog post about that the body is not ready for awakening. And I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. Have a look at it. And in that blog post was a link to a platform on the internet where volunteers guide seekers to see that there is no me thinking, deciding, acting, controlling anything. And I thought,
You mean you're referring to Liberation Unleashed?
Right, Liberation Unleashed, right. And so I thought, okay, I wonder whether there's anything behind it. So I started reading. You can read the archive there. And I started reading the archive. And it was very interesting. There was this dialogue with little experiments and questions. And then always came this point when the client saw something, and then I couldn't follow any longer. And it really took on the beauty of a Zen poem, what they said. And I didn't understand a word. And so I said, all right, something is happening there. And then I thought, what if really something happens there? Is this really what I want? And then all the questions then came up. Can I still function? What about my relationship? What about my friends?
You mean the questions led you to those questions? What about my?
Well, that was my fear. If I would see that there is no me, how would I be able to function?
Yeah, it's sort of that. I think a lot of people come through that. It's that. I think it's a confusion of no self equals no me.
Well, it does. In my view, it does equal no me.
Well, it's I always refer to it as no self as such. It's conceptual. I mean, we're here, and we've got a body, and I can't walk through that wall no matter how much I want to. I have to acknowledge the fact that I probably have to open the door first or open the window. Um, you know, that the concept of anatta is or no self. This concept of no self is a toughie. But yeah, I see what you're saying. It is no me as the me that we conceptualize ourselves as because of the aggregates, the 5 aggregates,
Right.
right?
For example.
Right.
Yeah, you could term it like that. But still, I didn't know that. I felt this me
Right.
felt pretty solid. It
Mhm.
felt like losing it, and they always have this example that it's like seeing that Santa doesn't exist, right?
Right. Right.
And,
Because Santa's a concept.
right.
Right.
But I thought, yeah, that sounds all nice. But what happens then? And then I thought, okay, I truly have done weirder stuff in my life. And I always fell on my feet. So if anything happens here, I'll fall on my feet again.
Mhm.
And so I was, during the next weeks, my radiation would start. And the condition to do this guiding there on the liberation platform is to reply each day. And I didn't know how much I would be affected by the radiation then. And so I thought, that's not a good idea. Maybe I can't do that. And there was a book with dialogues, just, I don't know how many. And it's called The Gateless Gatecrashers. And
Yes, I've read that book, The
yeah,
Gateless Gatecrashers. Yeah,
so
and I would recommend it to people.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's a good way to get your feet wet in the playing around in the pool of no self, right?
You get your feet pretty wet with that.
But no, you have to have a commitment to it. I
Yeah,
mean, you could read those dialogues
sure.
and just like reading and saying, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
not engaging at this. It's like facing your own death. If you don't really engage in facing your lack of self, um, then it won't help you,
yeah.
right?
But so I used this book. I didn't really feel like facing that there is no self. For me, it was more like I was sitting in waiting areas all the time with this book because
Yeah,
there was that doctor that wanted to talk to you and that
yeah,
doctor, and and it was so fascinating. I thought, never have I come across so beautiful questions that really let you look for this me. It doesn't say there is no me. You can say that, you can believe it, but that doesn't change a thing.
right, right.
But it just lets you look for it. And so I had boiled it down. I was around page 20. I had boiled it down to, okay, this is like a virus that attaches itself to all computer files.
Mm-hmm.
And there is seeing, okay, I have seen. There is hearing, I have heard. There is
Right.
talking, I talked.
Exactly, exactly,
And
exactly.
then there was a question that the guide asked that read, so is there a you in any physical form or shape? And I thought, what a silly question, of course not. And
Well,
thinking
yeah,
that, the shift happened.
yeah. So like you reading the book, it wasn't actually working with
Well,
a guide
I
at
asked myself the questions, I worked with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. It was just from working with that book.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fascinating thing. And at that point, I think I would want to talk a little bit about this I amness, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I think cultural aspects have have a lot of difference in this approach to I am. I think it's much easier for people from the East to not be attached because this conceptualization, this constant thinking, this building up of a person that lives in our head, right? Um, and we're so solidly focused right there in our head. That's, I think it's our heritage as Western thinkers. We were given that. It's our philosophy. I was thinking this morning in thinking about talking with you. I am is like it's like the declaration of Western philosophy. I mean, from Descartes, right? I think, therefore I am, right? And then we have in the Bible, in Exodus, Moses, in his interaction with God, says to God, well, when you send me, then they ask me who sent me. Well, what name should I give them? And he said, I am who I am, or I am that I am, right? So there's that pronouncement of I am that I am, right? So there's that I am that I am, so that there's that back door, I feel, that gets to Anada, but we're not going to go there. But even Popeye, the cartoon character. Do you know Popeye?
No,
I
I
don't know if
don't.
that was in Germany.
Yeah.
In the United States, there was Popeye was a sailor. Popeye the Sailor
Oh,
Man.
but the spinach man?
The Spinach Man.
Ah, I
That's
see.
right. Yeah, Popeye said, "I am that I am." He said it all the time. I am that I am. So I always thought there was somebody in writing dialogue for Popeye that was a philosopher or something, right? But what I think, though, is that there is this strong Western philosophical foundation that is tightly tied to the I amness of I am. And it even is from the Hebrew, they even term that God as Yahweh, using vowels, consonants with no vowels, so you can't pronounce it right. It's God can't be pronounced. God can't be conceptualized. And that in some ways is the breaking of the conceptual nature of the I amness in the West. What have you found in working with people from the Eastern approach with the Western approach? I think Westerners are you almost have to blow up their mind to get rid of their concepts. Easterners seem to get there faster. What is your thought?
I would say yes, that's true. I did work with Indians, and I know one guy, I chatted with him in a group, and he saw through the self-illusion within an hour.
Yeah.
I just asked him, just have a look. And he knew exactly what to do. They don't conceptualize that much to the day. It's true.
Right.
And there's even some research. Unfortunately, Marie Kondo wrote that book. I don't have it any longer. But there is a research about that. Indians have a more direct experience, and it's not first processed with thoughts and then kind of acknowledged. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like sort of they're almost like naturally Vipassana practitioners, right? Even if they didn't know what that was, right? I mean, it seems that way. I had a book too about how I forgot the name of it too. Easterners and Westerners looked at different things, like different shapes and different pictures, and they saw it entirely different. Like the Japanese culture is so community oriented, so that interdependence is not a concept that they have a problem with, right? At all. We do, because we're in America, especially, we're like cowboys, right? We'll do it all. We don't need anybody else. so that's what I mean. I think so. They more Easterners are more naturally aligned to this kind of processing. So you got your. What happened is it was. So you put it on the Liberation Unleashed process, or the Gateless Gatecrashers book. It all started there for you to have this sense of going through an awakening experience, right?
Yes. I mean, I saw immediately, I had a strong, also a physical shift, that there is no me. It can be seen positively. not only as something that's not there, but it can be seen. And I immediately realized which mistake I had made. And why I hadn't seen that before. It's just in front of our eyes. It's not hidden. It's hidden in plain sight. And that's why it's so well hidden. And that was very fascinating. And they say that when you see through the me, you fall through all fetters usually. And that happened to mostly everybody. And it happened to me too. So that was really this kind of very different experience for a few days. And then it slowly reverted back. But the identification with the thought I was just totally gone. And I couldn't even remember after a few days how that had felt. It was just gone, like deleted from my hard drive.
Yeah, that's the process is similar. My personal practice, like I said, I came from a Tibetan tradition, and then I shifted into this non-sectarian Japanese. When I was inducted as a minister and a sensei, I shifted into this Japanese Mahayana. It's like Zen and Jodo Shinshu, which you may not know about. It's it's less known, I think, in this culture. And my practice is more like that, which is why I focus on the everyday aspect of Buddhism, because I think none of this means a crap, really, if we're not dealing with it every day. I don't care how awakened you may feel, but if you're not bringing it into your everyday, then it's not really helpful for you or anyone else. So that's sort of the approach I take. But my meditative practice has shifted, I find, and I think I heard you say this in one of the things, one of the videos, is we make now mindfulness is like the rage, right? Mindfulness is good and it helps build concentration. And I personally think you couldn't get where you were without having that originally.
Yes,
I couldn't get to, right? I mean, that's your foundation. You may not need it now, but you did need it to get to where you were. It's like my teacher, my sensei says, it takes in Jodo Shinshu, there's two concepts they call them: self-power and other power. Zen is a self-power practice. It's like, I'm going to sit here until I'm enlightened, right?
Right.
I'm just going to do that. And other power in the Jodo Shinshu tradition is this concept. Most people, a lot of people get it confused with the sense of God or a savior, and it's not that at all. In my estimation, there are some fundamentalists who think that way, but I don't think that way. It's more of a connection to everything that is life as it is. Shunyata, it's and dependent origination and all the things that the Buddha taught. It's a direct connection to that, but you have to be it. Like you said, the I has to disappear for you to be it, right? You can't.
It's not a two-step process in what I do. The moment it is seen, it's gone. It doesn't have to be embodied or whatever that means, or to be practiced in everyday life. It's just gone. You're just now that. That's the new normal.
Well, exactly. And that's what I think maybe I miscommunicated. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Well, people who haven't seen that directly maybe are trying to see it, but I think you can see it in everyday life. I guess what I was getting at is you don't have to necessarily sit down on that cushion
no, you don't
2-3 hours a day, because as you glimpse it from reading a book, I had my feeling by just doing an open awareness practice. Just open awareness is blasting myself out of my head and into everything that is. And once you do that, it's wowie zowie time, because you're that's where you are, right? That's where you are. And you're always there, but I don't always connect at that level. I must say, I go back to sometimes connecting in a normal way, but I'm able to shift into that pretty much at any time, because once you see that, you see that. So this is sort of like, isn't it sort of like all the self-inquiry methods that were formed from meditative traditions, like the Neo-Veda, the Vedanta, the ones that came from the Hindu self-inquiry traditions that I think Adyashanti follows. And then now there's like Locke Kelly. I don't know if you have heard of
I've
Locke
heard
Kelly.
of him, yes.
Yeah, Locke Kelly does I think he calls it, what does he call it? Awake awareness or something. But since I come from the Tibetan tradition, this direct pointing that you talk about, this is what we call direct pointing into the
Right.
Tibetan
It's
tradition,
direct pointing.
right? Yeah. That comes to me from the Dzogchen tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, or the Sutra Mahamudra tradition. And what they do is they work with a guide, or a lama in this case, to do direct pointing, that looking for the self.
Well, actually, it's much older.
It's the Vedanta, I think. It comes from that. The Vedic
I'm not
readings.
familiar with Vedanta really, but I know that the Buddha gave his shortest instruction once when he was approached on his arm rounds and he didn't really have time. And it's very famous, the Bahia Sutta. And,
yes.
And he said, then Bahia, you should train yourself thus: in reference to the seen, there will only be the seen. And in reference to the hurt, and to the sense, and the cognized, or the thought. Thus should you train yourself. And when there will be only the seen in reference to the seen and everything else, then there is no you in connection with that. And when there is no you in connection with that, there is no you there. When there is no you there, you are neither here, nor yonder, nor between the two. This justice is the end of suffering.
Amen.
Yeah.
And hallelujah. Right. Exactly. Absolutely. It's and that if you have had that experience, it makes perfect sense to you.
Absolutely.
In a way that's not conceptual, because now you're very comfortable with just not I am seeing, just it's seeing, or not I am walking, there's walking, right? There's walking, and it's not. And I had a very profound experience once, many years ago, I think, when I was first studying this. And this sounds really ridiculous, but I think I was watching my dog at the time, who's long since passed, chew like a chew toy, right? It was actually a physical chew, a piece of rawhide, and she was chewing away, and I was watching her chew away, and all of a sudden, there was no me, there was no dog, we were chewing. We were chewing. And and I was like, it's one of those things, if you have those experiences, like I was like calling my partner over and trying to explain it. It made absolutely no sense coming out of my mouth. But it's still with me. And I think I was like 30 years old at the time, and I'm 67 now. So, you cannot trade that in. But the Buddha had it, clearly. The Buddha absolutely had it. It's the same as in the Heart Sutra, right? I don't know if you study the Heart Sutra.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I mean, I'm teaching that now in one of my sanghas. It's my, I am very tied to the Prajnaparamita sutras, and the Heart Sutra to me is what the Buddha said there, right? Isn't it that's the case? What he said in the sutra you just quoted in the
yes.
Yeah.
And it's literally true. It's really literally true. That often blew my mind. Like there are more steps in this path, 7 altogether, and where you come to see, for example, that there is no world outside that is mirrored and perceived, but that is the end of the world, really. And
yeah.
And then I remembered that he somewhere had taught that it is in this frame of the body with its senses that the world arises.
Right.
And I thought, gosh, this is literally true. I always thought this is some poetic expression for something. But that actually so much is absolutely literally true blew me away.
Yeah, see, and well, you studied Zen. I think, well, did you study in the Soto tradition?
Yes, sort of tradition.
Yeah. So, in the Rinzai tradition, they use koan study more than in the Soto tradition, and it's typical. Koans take you there, but most people see them as poems or puzzles to solve. But they take you to that direct realization. That's where the gateless gate came,
Yes,
right? That's
right.
from that.
I know.
But I wanted to kind of talk to you about what these things kind of happen if you're dedicated and you do it, but your approach is like you're actually, I don't mean grabbing them, but you're taking them by the hand and you're asking them questions and you're pulling them along the path, that in your case the 10 fetters, which we should probably mention what they are. And it's like teachers have been trying to do this for a long time, and you study with so many teachers and it never happened for you. How can this dialogue make it happen?
Well, the key are the questions. One client of mine who recently passed through our 10 fetters, she said, the questions are really what made it, and I don't have these questions in me. And that's the thing. We cannot think of this kind of questions from a frame of mind that's somewhere else. The questions can only come when something is seen through, and then it's very simple to ask these questions.
And in your experience in working with clients, do you work primarily with Liberation Unleashed, or
no?
It seems like you have your own practice. Is that correct?
Liberation Unleashed only deals with the first step. And they want to stay specialized on that. I started to guide in the second step, which is I desire and O will. But I think it's a good decision that they said, no, that we want to specialize and stay specialized on the self-illusion. And so I just started my own forum, which is private, so it can't be Googled. But I have a website and I'm pretty active on Facebook too. And I learned to guide on Liberation Unleashed. Ilona is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I learned a lot from her. Overall, I'm standing on many shoulders. This is not my merit that happened at all. And so I really owe her a lot. And what over time makes it difficult for me, for example, to guide in the first that it is so far away that I can't relate to it any longer. And then I can't come up with the proper questions.
So what are you saying? Are you saying you can't do it anymore, or are you are you doing it differently?
I lost my teeth.
Yeah.
I still can do it, but I now select people. Like, for example, I meet with them before I take them online. And then I only work online, by the way. And then if they haven't seen through the self-illusion yet, then I'll just give them a few little experiments, like lift your hand up with the palm facing up, then turn it again, keep turning, watch like a hawk. What's doing that? And in their reaction, I can see whether they can grasp that.
Yes, and if you're doing it video wise, you can always see when the light bulb goes off, right?
Right. Yeah, I do it via video. With audio, I can't see enough, and when they kind of get that, woo, things are not as I thought they are, I take them. If they just keep turning and say, yeah, I think something's turning it, I don't take them, because I can't take them deeply enough out of thoughts to work with me. They need to already be able to come out of thoughts.
Right.
Yeah.
If they're hard, if their concepts are too hardwired, they're going to
Yes.
stay there.
Yes.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, my audience has probably never ever heard of the 10
Mm-hmm.
fetters. And it's a long thing. And if you could briefly run down the 10 fetters and what that actually means, and how that's sort of like the foundation of your practice, I'm guessing,
Mm-hmm.
rather, you know, you're really getting at the disconnection from self, which is the first fetter, right? But you kind of go backwards, from what I understand. I'm not a Theravada student at all, but that's my understanding of it. So if you could explain that a little bit, what that all means, and you know, and why, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Yeah. Uh, Happily. It's a process that can actually be watched when unraveling all the layers again. So the self is created through many layers, 10 layers. That's the 10 fetters. And
Hmm.
I will explain it the way it develops, because that way it can be most easily understood. So the first layer, we are born unfettered. We are born unfettered, but with tendencies. Like one of our tendencies is that we want to feel good. Just watch a baby.
Yeah.
We just want to feel good.
Right.
And um, these tendencies start to simply overrun the facts and look, and that's the 10th fetter, first fetter that develops, the 10th, that is dissolved last then. And it's
What
ignorance.
is the 10th fetter? What is it?
Ignorance. It's called
Ignorant.
ignorance. We are ignoring the facts that we
Yeah,
can't
that's
always feel good. Sorry to break the news. It's just not possible. As long
right,
as we
right,
have the body and senses, it's
right,
not right
right,
to always feel good. And to always feel good, we must have something reliable. So things need to have substance. They need to have thingness to them to stay, to be permanent.
right.
And so these three impossibles are three
Yeah.
impossibles. So what happens now? An immense restlessness arises, which is the 9th fetter.
Hmm.
And the restlessness starts searching for something to hold on to stand on, for a safe ground, for something to be reliable, for something to feel good, please. I had
Yes.
already seen that what is simply is, and no matter what I try to add, nothing is ever added. And still, this tendency to always feel good arose again, like saying,
Hmm.
I don't care whether it's possible or not, I want to feel good.
Well, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
And because nothing can be found that provides that, there is no thing that's substantial and reliable. Um, we simply invent something, and that's the first very subtle sense of I am or I exist.
Hmm.
It's in Germany, we have this translation which I like a lot. It's me deeming. It's like thinking there is a me. It's very subtle, and it would dissolve. For me, it was like a very well-known taste I have known consciously for, I think, since I was 7 years old or so. The taste that was me.
Hmm.
And I sometimes even had a bad taste in my mouth from myself when I did really bad stuff. So,
Right, right, right. I do. We do remember. I think most of us remember that time when we had that awareness. I'm me. I'm something other than these other things out here, right?
right.
And then that's once you got that, you're that's where you're stuck.
Well, the subtle sense of me, the first kind of seed, would easily dissolve if it wouldn't be supported. So this me then
Right,
is equipped with the faculty of perception. That's at the core of, it's called desire for the formless. But it's not,
right,
some people say it's desire for formless absorptions, the jhanas, but it's not. It's the desire to what to think what is appearing is perceived inside with the subtle sense of I am, and inside and outside is created. And it's an outside world that's perceived inside, and the outside world unfolds in space and time, and and we pursue it in our limited consciousness, and that's the seventh theta. Then, then we assume a subject that is experiencing what is happening. It's the desire for form, the next theta, the sixth, and the desire for form, assuming a subject, creates this impression that there are borders between the things and between me and everything else.
Right.
And then we want...
That creates the subject-object duality that really causes all our, a lot of our problems.
Yes. Right? And then we want these objects, or we reject them, further establishing kind of borders and things being outside of ourselves, and imagining we could be in control of what's happening.
Right. Attachment and craving.
Right. And then since whatever we try, we still don't get what we want, we call in higher powers with rites and rituals. Rites and rituals are the third theta, design of will have 4 and 5. And now this calling in of higher powers doesn't work either very well. And so we doubt whether what we believe maybe in the wrong gods or whatever. Yes. And in the end, the self-illusion is established, which seems to be totally in control of what's happening. Like, I think, I decide what to think, I act, I control, I experience. It's me experiencing everything. It's my feelings. I'm the owner of all this, my body. And that's the end of result. And that one can be pretty stable.
Yeah.
Though it always needs to be kept up. And everybody will recognize the restlessness, because just sit down for 2 minutes on your sofa doing nothing, not even meditating.
Right.
What happens? Something wants to be done. That's the restlessness. This is a house of cards that would just fall apart if it wouldn't be kept up all the time. And it takes a lot of energy to keep it going.
Yeah. So you work with your clients. Now you said there were 7 steps, and then there are the 10 fetters, but the 7 steps are to release the 10 fetters. And that's
right.
What
Some fetters fall together. The first 3 fall together, and 4 and 5 fall together.
You know, a lot of this reminds me of the 5 hindrances that we study in Mahayana Buddhism, you know, the doubt, the restlessness, the ill will, the desire, those are the things that keep us from meditating. But then again, in this process, like, meditation isn't the thing. It's the inquiry. That's the thing, right? To get to where they are.
So the only meditation I recommend for this inquiry, I call come to your senses.
Yeah. And that's what I like that, because that rings a bell for me. I mean, we're on the same wavelength, because I always say, you know, it's really just about things as they are.
Right.
It's just about things as they are. And you need to have like an active acceptance of things as they are, not a passive acceptance of giving up. Okay. Oh God, this is how they are. This is things as they are. But to me, one thing that I'm not hearing you talk about, and maybe it's in there because, like I said, I am not a Theravadan scholar. I don't really know this. I'm not Pali. I'm Sanskrit. I'm not, you know what I mean? But one of the things I'm not hearing you talk about is dependent origination. You seem to be focusing on anatta and shunyata. Again, here's the Sanskrit, but you know what I'm talking about, which is no self and emptiness. But then the dependent origination, impermanence, those 2 overarching things. I know those are like the substance behind the 10 fetters, but do you talk about that in your guidance?
Dependent origination is another concept that is seen through in the seventh fetter when time and space fall away. For dependent origination to be true, there needs to be a concept of time and place. And the Buddha himself said that there is a space where dependent origination doesn't apply.
Yes, and then it's one of his later teachings
Right.
too. He talked. He blew that right up. That's what people have a little problem with this, because there are all these teachings, and then there's another teaching that says, "Forget everything I just said." Right?
Yes, because the Buddha talked to people. I talk to people
Exactly.
too, and I will tell them something like, when people start out, the first thing they learn, you can see this journey through the fetters on so many levels. You can see it like they are learning that nothing has substance, and we start with thoughts, because about everybody can see that whatever I think of is not really there. And I have
Right.
some nice experiments for that to find out. And um, still thoughts make a pretty good case, and that do seem like what we think of is there. But that's the starting point.
Yeah.
And now I tell them everything else what is experienced with the senses is actually there. I call it real, though I don't do that any longer, but I call it's actually there, right?
Hmm.
And of course, there are always some people who say, well, but that's not true. Nothing is really there. And that's true. There is no thing there, but you
That.
can't see it straight away. It's not possible. You really have to unpeel it. Otherwise, the layers are too dense. They can't be seen through in one swoop. They can maybe, but the records I find about that are pretty rare. And so dependent origination falls away. It's actually one, we have final questions for each fetter. We are a team of several guides who work on that. And
Hmm.
in the final questions, we ask about what dependent origination means now in the seventh fetter.
Okay, good, because that's what I was wondering. Because to me, it's like that's where I started getting my realization was, it was those three concepts. It was dependent origination, because the dependent origination is actually what causes ignorance, right? That's what the 12 limbs are like. That was like the recipe for ignorance, right?
Right,
That's how we got
right,
that's how we
right.
got here, right? It's like you take a little of this, you take that's the 12 limbs, a little of that, a little of that, and what do you got? You got a bunch of ignorant people, right? And I don't mean ignorant like dumb, you know what I'm
Mm-hmm,
saying, is that's just, we're grounded in ignorance, and that is our sort of in our inheritance as human
mm-hmm,
beings. And it builds on itself, and it's a habit, right? It's a habit. And if you were to believe in multiple lifetimes, it would be a habit that transferred from lifetime to
mm-hmm,
lifetime. Not that I'm not I'm sort of a agnostic when it comes to that, but I definitely see the ingrained
mm-hmm.
habit of that ignorance, and that's a hard thing to break. So yeah, dependent origination, and I wanted to touch on that in light of what you've been teaching. Here we are, and especially also I wanted to tie it to your friend death. um Here we are in this pandemic, and how are you doing, by the
I'm
way?
doing fine, thank you.
I forgot to ask. I usually start by saying, how are you getting on with this? Are you getting on all
Yes,
right?
thank you.
Yeah. Okay. It's hard, and I think it's I think it's, there's so much opportunity in this time of the pandemic if we are spiritual practitioners, because it illustrates interdependence in a way that nobody could have illustrated interdependence. And it illustrated the lack of our free will, if you will, in a way that nobody could teach, as much as the world is teaching us, or whatever this little bug, this little virus is teaching us. So what I wanted to say is, like you said, that death is not a probability, it's a realistic possibility, and it never, as we never know when it's going to come, and we never know what's going to cause it, but we have to make friends with it. What do you think are the core spiritual lessons that we can take from the pandemic? And I'm sure you've thought about this.
Well, I mean, situations like this are really why I do my work. My mission is to end suffering. And suffering can be ended. We don't have to suffer. Yes, I would prefer to be more in nature. Usually I live in a travel trailer all summer, which obviously isn't possible right now. And
right.
But suffering doesn't have to be involved. And, I had pretty bad symptoms like 3 weeks ago, I think. And I was really short of breath walking on a very plain grounds here in the park. And I thought, no, this is getting weird. And I have a little device to test my blood oxygen, and it had really dropped to a level where you get concerned. And so I called a doctor, and they made a test, and I thought, okay, I might have got it, and I'm in a high-risk group just because of my age. And okay, I'm already a little bit, how should I say, fireproof, because I had another cancer after the end of my journey. But it was like, yes, that could happen, and it would be just totally okay. I could die.
So you felt you had that direct experience looking at it in the face in this pandemic,
Yes.
in addition to your
Yeah,
cancer
right.
experience, and you're totally at peace with it.
Because there's nothing left that could die. Nothing would change apart from the sensory experience.
And what about and I know we should probably end here. I think we're getting close to an hour, but what about how do we help people who aren't there yet, right? They haven't unleashed from the fetters, that haven't realized the sense that their self isn't what they think it is, and that really is nothing that they should be hanging on to. How do you help people who are just walking around everyday people?
Yes. The first most important advice I would have is, please do not try to take on an enlightened perspective, like trying to see everything like a movie, or it's not real, or whatever kind of spiritual arguments might come into your head. We can't brainwash ourselves into awakening. It's not possible.
That's like spiritual bypassing, right? You've heard that term?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I see it a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I actually talked to a lady who had a very stressful situation, and she tried to detach from it and landed in a very bad space. That's what happens then. You land in a very nihilistic, bad space when nothing makes any sense any longer, and there is no purpose, and you could just be dead. But it's a kind of resignation dead, and not, that could happen. And so my most important advice, don't try to bypass it. If you're feeling bad, you're feeling bad. We can't escape what's there. There's nowhere to go. And
absolutely.
No. And it's really important to acknowledge the feeling and feel it with kindness, and not beating yourself up for the spiritual teacher on YouTube said, oh, it doesn't matter to her now. Even I said it. But to me, it does matter, and it's really bad. And I'm like, my skin is itching to get out of this house. And
yes, see, that's the thing. I think that needs to be said. This experience needs to be embodied, right? I think we need to feel it. The only time we cling to feelings is when we don't let ourselves feel them, right? When we run away from them or spiritually bypass them or whatever. And the feelings that are around this pandemic, my experience has been, it's like grief. Grief is like a big mess of things, and you never know what's popping up next. It's depression and anxiety and fear and anger, and all these things are going on, and they're just a big
Oh,
mess.
yeah.
And right, and I think they need to be felt, and they need to be talked about. And one thing about it is that when you can look at these things straight in the eye as things as they are, then I think that's a step along in the
Yes, the
practice,
secret
right?
is, I tell you, I work so much with emotions, and I'm traumatized, and I had to work through all the stuff on the path. There is no way around it. Awakening doesn't mean you
No.
get an easy pass on that and everything will be fine and you live happily ever after. It just doesn't happen that way. Yeah, we have to go through it. And this is with every feeling. And yes, in this pandemic, what's actually happening is people are really grieving, and grieving has 4 stages. First is
Mhm,
ignoring what's happening. Elizabeth
mhm.
Kubler-Ross talked about that.
Right,
And
the Kubler-Ross stages,
yes,
right.
and then it's anger. You don't want it. You just want it to go away, and you fight it, and you think it's all bad, and all the measures that are taken, and you have to stay at home. You just fight it, and then you become depressed, and that's normal too. Just allow that to happen. Just let this have its life cycle, so it can finish actually. And yes, it's sad that we have to be so confined, and um, that's how it is. And just feel that too. It's really sad. Maybe you can't see your,
Oh, and the sadness of all the people dying and suffering and being
yes,
alone. I mean, yeah, that's unbearable
yes.
sadness for me, and I think
I'm
most
taking care of
people.
my brother who's has dementia and is in a nursing home. And he's there now basically on his own. We found a way that I can visit him because he has a balcony. So I stand under the balcony and then we talk.
Yes, my mother-in-law has dementia, is in a
Yes.
facility, and my partner, she goes to, I have a autoimmune condition, so not only am I old, I've got double risk, so I don't take any chances. But my partner sneaks to the back of the nursing home and goes to my mother-in-law's window and holds up signs and talks to her and
Oh, right.
dances and stuff. But it's hard. That's
That's
still
hard.
very hard.
It's hard.
The pain.
And also not
Yeah.
seeing maybe your grandkids. We have little ones in the family
Yes.
too, and we're just talking via Skype, but they're not so used to talking like that. With kids, you need to interact to be in contact.
No, they
Right.
start running away, right? They start getting their toys, and, and you're not really interacting at all.
And so, and after the sadness comes the acceptance. And I would just
Yeah.
invite everybody to allow all that, to allow yourself to be angry about it, that just don't act on it, but feel it. Acting on it only
Yeah.
means you're trying to avoid to feel it. Just allow this feeling of, I so really want to get out of here. And when the sadness is there, it's all right to be sad. It's okay to be sad. Just it's okay to pamper yourself and know this is not the time where you have to take all the immeasurable opportunities of so much time and hustle and create something new and clean your house,
Or
Marie
clean your
Kondo,
house.
everything, whatever.
Yeah.
No, you don't have to do all that. Just take care that you get through this. And if you're not feeling well, then just don't do so much. And then maybe your house isn't as clean and your garden isn't mowed, the lawn isn't mowed, and it's just like
Mhm.
that. It's we have a nice cake. We do that sometimes. We have a French bakery not so far away.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the time to pamper ourselves, because it's, you know what it is? It's the time to send metta, the metta prayer. It's the time to send metta. In metta, we send metta to ourselves first, and then uh, to all others. And that's such a good teaching, because right now, if we can't help anybody if we're like drowning in depression and sadness and anger. The only way we're going to get to that acceptance level, I think, is by babying ourselves and taking care of
Yeah, and
ourselves.
letting yourself go through the different emotions of grief,
Right.
ignoring what's happening, which you see a lot still around, even on the leading levels.
Yeah.
And then the anger about it, and who
Yeah.
did that, and all these theories about, yeah.
Oh, and conspiracy theories and
Yeah,
protests and
and
oh, that's
that's the anger about it. It's
yeah.
really the anger. And then the grief, that's fine. That's a more mellow state, but it's probably the most uncomfortable one. And then the acceptance will set in. Now, I love research. And so there is some research on dealing with emotions. They found out that if you feel the feelings, really, really feel it. And I'll talk in a moment how that I feel it's done best. Then a feeling will end within 60 to 90 seconds reliably.
Wow.
You don't
I
have
didn't
to.
know that fast. I've seen
Yeah,
it happen in me, but 60 to 90 seconds, I don't think
yeah.
so. That's great.
So what I teach people is just allow the feeling to be there, and whatever it is, maybe you're angry, you're really angry. So feel the anger, and then a feeling are body sensations plus a name. So there are body sensations, and a name is given, which in this case would be anger. Now, which body sensations are there? And then you feel the body sensations, and they are fine. Allow them to be there, and even let yourself sink into them like into a warm bath, and just sink into them and relax into them and let them be there. And whilst you're in there, find out whether they are unpleasant or pleasant or neutral.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
are the sensations themselves angry? Do they know about their name? Feeling the sensations like that, they will pass very quickly.
That is so true. I've had that experience with pain. Due to my lupus, I have a lot of pain, or I've had. Right now, I'm feeling pretty good, but I've had it. I remember telling someone this, actually, one of my teachers who couldn't believe it, and I said, I can sink into my pain so much that it just becomes fascinating, and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't scare me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I get there's the curiosity about exploring bodily sensations is
Mm-hmm.
very
Mm-hmm.
helpful. It's very, very.
Absolutely. You know what I find especially interesting about pain? I when I started right after the gate, I slipped in my bathtub and broke a rib, and it was really painful to breathe, and the painkillers just didn't do much. And so I thought, okay, while I'm stuck with it, I might as well look into it. And so I focused on the sensations, and in the end, I couldn't even tell whether they're inside my body or not.
I know. It's yes. If you do that enough, you can't find the end of yourself.
No,
Your
no,
skin doesn't contain yourself, right?
no.
Yeah, that's so good. I'm glad you brought it up. I know we're running kind of long, and I hope you have a little time, but because I wanted to ask one more question. Do you have time for one more
Yes,
question?
sure.
Oh, okay. This and I touched on this at the beginning, and I said we'd get to it, so we're going to get to it. Awakening is such a buzzword. Enlightenment is a buzzword. Nirvana, not so much. No, people don't use it so much anymore. But in this culture, in this time and place, awakening. We even had that word. We have that word now. She's woke. She's woke. And he's woke. I don't know if it happens in Germany. It's all over the place here. It's ridiculous. But when they're using woke, they're referring to someone who has a perception of social injustice, climate, the reality of climate change, and that's what they're referring to be as woke. But I still have trouble with being awakened or enlightened. Now, in my understanding of the Theravada tradition, and this is where you're going to have to clear me up, when someone goes through the 10 fetters and releases them completely, they become an arahat.
Mhm.
And that means they're fully enlightened and they're not returning. Okay?
Yeah, I
Now,
can't speak into that because I don't have experience with other lives.
well, see, no, I don't, but I don't either. But what I'm saying is,
Mhm.
would you, this is sort of a poo-poo in many circles. When you say you've broken the 10 fetters, or when you've taken someone, they've broken the 10 fetters, what you're, from my understanding, then therefore, right, the logic that follows, therefore you're saying that you're fully enlightened, right?
Whatever that word means, I can't identify with it. You have to understand that I don't have any sense of identity at all. So even saying I'm enlightened would be ridiculous, because it doesn't, this attribute
What is
doesn't
the
belong to
I?
anything. What becomes very clear after the 10th fetter is that the work is done. This is it. A client of mine calls it, I'm unpacked. There is nothing left. I'm unpacked. It's like unpacking a suitcase, and you know when it's empty. And the Buddha said that the final knowledge arises, that it's a long sentence, but in the end, that the work is done and that there is no more coming into being. And this is one of the final questions
Right.
for the 10th fetter. What does that mean in your experience? And this knowing that there's no more coming into being is a very clear. But from the experience side, when I saw through the 10th fetter, there's a shift in nearly each fetter except the 9th. And I saw that everything had just always been this way, no matter what I had thought. And I had been like a fish swimming the 7 seas in search of water. It was a joke.
Yeah,
It
right,
was a
right,
joke.
right.
There is nothing grand about
Yeah.
it. You don't acquire anything. On the contrary, you're standing there with gloriously empty pockets. And I remember that feeling. After like 2 minutes, a sense of total ordinariness set in. So ordinary, I've never felt like that in my whole life.
I love that you said that, and I saw that was in your 7 steps or whatever. The ordinary, getting that. I think that is the thing that I've always tried to express. Now, I don't use the word awakened or enlightened, but I always say I have glimpses of that. Because I'm not really sure what that means anyway. So I just say I had these glimpses where that I'm kind of nothing, and there's nothing out there, and that there are glimpses. Now, I mean, I go around every day doing what I do, and having my to-do lists, and and making podcasts and thinking about things. So I'm not thinking about that all the time, but I can switch into that. So what it is, though, is that ability to be a no self in a non-world while you're being ordinary.
Yes,
Right?
I'm not even a non-self. It's not that a non-self is kicking around here. There's just nothing. No, this is really
Nothing. Okay.
shunyata. This is emptiness.
There's
And
total emptiness,
I
right?
don't have a sense of a body either, which can be quite interesting when you're sick and don't know, am I sick or not? Because there are just sensations,
Uh-huh.
and they don't tell me whether I should see a doctor. And my partner sometimes tells me, she says, then, I want to take you to the emergency room now. And then I go, because I know she
Hmm.
sees this now. I can't feel it any longer.
You mean you don't have
Yes,
pain?
but much reduced. That's really very nice. It's very
What?
reduced.
Oh,
It's a
but
very nice feature. Yeah, it's very reduced.
okay. So that's
Yeah.
very interesting. Well, I think the promise we hold, though, from your experience and how you teach, is that well, now you can't go anywhere anyway, so it doesn't much matter. But you don't have to trek to India, right? And you don't have to sit on a cushion for 5 hours a day, and you don't have to give up all your belongings, and you don't have to renounce the world. You can still be in it, right? But the being is just being. It's not you
Right.
being.
It's
It's
just
being.
being. And being even sounds, the trouble is, the moment we use a word, we think it has substance. It's something. It's not something. It's
Yes. Yeah.
it's
My
yeah.
teacher says every time we want to put a period on everything, and that means once you use a word, it's there forever, and there's a
Right.
period after it. It will never
Right.
change,
And so I
right?
call it no attribute isness.
Business. I like it. Okay.
But it feels
What?
completely ordinary. And if any teacher puts up a huge show, just run, 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 and
Yeah,
go to
yeah,
a different
yeah.
place.
Exactly.
And it's, I mean, I was a bit disappointed. I could have done with a few fireworks, but that's not how it is. It's really just an ordinary person who's done their work. That's exactly the sense.
Yes.
And there is nothing grand about it. You don't gain any faculties you didn't have before. And you're not losing any either. It's just like seeing everything with a clean lens. There is no dust any longer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the
Yeah.
difference. It's a vast difference. And it really gets rid of all suffering. There's just no resistance left to experience at all. And I don't have to think myself into that. It just doesn't come up. So I don't
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
work
Well,
on this to keep it going or to come into this state. It's just spontaneously there. It sometimes drives my partner crazy. Like she says, okay, what would you like to eat? And I said, I basically eat anything. And she said, could you just make up your mind? And so now I volunteer something.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's just it's when we're not clinging and grasping, which are all the contributors to suffering. Like the Four Noble Truths. If we're not clinging and grasping to a self or to things or to things we want, life gets to be kind of, it's neutral, but it's not like no fun. I mean, life gets to be kind of neutral, and you quit shooting yourself with that second arrow that Buddha
Absolutely.
talks about.
And it's really true what one of the patriarchs said: when the mind is at peace, the world is at
Yes,
peace.
exactly. Yeah, it's so true. And that's what we should do. We should wish peace to everybody. I mean, because that's what we can what we can offer is if we glimpsed it ourselves, then we know it's possible for everyone.
Right.
What?
And it can even be there all the time, like the bass tone in music. On the organ, you sometimes just put your foot down and leave it there, and then you play something on top of it. It's something like that.
I like that. I like that.
For me, it's the most important feature: the stillness or peace. Yeah.
Now, I want to end by asking: you have a book, and it's going to be released.
It's not yet. I'm editing it. It's so much work. I just can't rush this because it's supposed to be instructions that people can use through all fetters to help themselves through it.
Yes.
I actually had the idea when I had my second cancer 2 years ago now, and it was uterine cancer.
Oh.
And that, that didn't faze me at all. I was so surprised. I was ready for all the fear coming up again. I thought, now let's see. And nothing happened. It was like, oh, okay. And I came out of it feeling like I hadn't suffered a scratch.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah, that was very impressive.
I'm happy to hear you're well.
Yeah, that was all worthwhile. Really.
But I hear you about the editing. I just released my first book last November 2019. Yes. It took me a year to write, but the longest part was the editing, and I hated every minute. And I had a friend who's an editor who helped me edit it. I honestly hated her throughout the whole process because you found another thing. Oh no, you mean that doesn't make any sense? Okay. So I absolutely get that. So I can't plug it yet, but we will.
Not yet. Yes. Yeah, I just received an email saying, all right, these are the extended notes on the first 6 chapters.
Oh, I know. I really had I had a love relationship with the book until the editing started. And then I hated the whole thing. And I mean, there were times where I thought I wasn't going to do it. I thought this is going to be a book in my mind, and I never promoted it yet because I kept thinking I may not get through this editing phase. So I hear you.
I will, but it's really quite something. The good thing is I translated a book already from English into German, and so I kind of know this process, and I know that it has an end at some point, even though you mostly feel, well, this is just going to want to be one of these unfinished things.
Yes, I thought mine was too, but it's actually, I'm going to promote it for you. See, it's actually a book now, Everyday Buddhism.
Oh,
So
nice. Beautiful.
it's actually a real book. And I'm starting a second one, but only in my head. We're not there.
Mhm.
So, but thank you so much, Christiane. I mean, I just love this conversation. I told you we were going to go way too long. I probably could have talked to you 3 hours, but we'll do it again maybe sometime when the pandemic's over or so.
That would be lovely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely when your book is released. How's that? When you get
Oh, yes.
when
wonderful.
you get through editing
Yes.
hell, you could contact me, okay?
Right.
All right. So
I will.
say thank you so much, Christiane. You have a wonderful day. Enjoy your pandemic, and hopefully we'll talk again.
Yes, thank you so much for this lovely interview. It was beautiful. And we'll talk again, and stay healthy.
That's it for this episode. And as a reminder, don't forget that there are many ways to join me and others in either our private, donation-supported Everyday Sangha, happening every other week on Thursday evening, 7:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, or our new free open Sangha every week, alternating Tuesday afternoons at 2 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time with me, Wendy Shinyo, hosting, and on the following week, Wednesday evenings at 7:30 p.m. with Levi Shinyo Sensei hosting. Until next time, keep finding ways to make yours and all others' days better.